Before we begin, let me ask you this. When was the last time you truly felt the weight of being alive? Not in passing, not in theory, but deep in your bones. When did you last pause and realize that this moment you are in right now, this breath, this beat of your heart, is a gift that countless others will never receive again? Most people rush through their lives numb, distracted, chasing things that vanish and escaping things that matter. But you're here. You stopped. You chose to listen. And for that, something powerful begins. This isn't just a lesson. This is a mirror, a callback to yourself. This is about seeing clearly what most people refuse to look at. The hard truths, the beautiful truths, the truths that hurt and heal all at once. Stoicism isn't a cold, ancient philosophy tucked away in a dusty book. It is alive. It is fire. It is medicine for the soul. And it begins not with comfort, but with confrontation. Don't cry, but you need to hear this. Because it might sting. Because it might crack the illusions you've been carrying. Because it might force you to stop blaming the world and start reclaiming your power. But what comes after that is worth it. Peace that doesn't depend on conditions. Strength that doesn't shake when things fall apart. Wisdom that can carry you through any storm. You won't be the same after this. Not because I said something special, but because deep down you already know the truth. I'm just here to remind you. Now let's begin. Chapter 1. The Weight of Being Alive. If you are watching this right now, you are gifted. You are alive. You woke up this morning. You have the gift of another day. Someone somewhere didn't get that gift. They didn't wake up. They went to sleep for the last time last night. Yesterday was not guaranteed. Tomorrow is not owed. Today is all we have. The present moment is all we will ever have. This is not to be taken lightly. Our mind, like our body, never stops working. It is a miracle when you think about it. From the time we are born to the time we pass, our mind is always working. Our heart is always beating. When you think about this deeply and remind yourself daily, you will realize how lucky we are to be alive every single moment. You will realize how fragile life truly is, and you will be grateful. How can you not be? Even in dire circumstances, there is always something to be grateful for. Life is valuable. Epictetus was a slave before we won his freedom, but he didn't let that deter him. He didn't let depression take him over. He maintained control over his mind and eventually became the philosopher we know of today. His physical freedom was taken, but his inner freedom remained untouched. This is the essence of Stoicism, that while external things may be taken from us, our response, our will, our inner peace remain in our control. The world can touch your body, but it cannot enslave your soul unless you allow it. The weight of being alive isn't something to run from. It's something to honor. The Stoics understood this well. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself in his meditations that death was not something to fear, but a natural return. He used this awareness not to mope, but to focus, to cherish, to act. The knowledge of death sharpens the blade of life. It doesn't dull it. What would change in your life if you reminded yourself that this day is a one-time offering, not in a fearful way, but with reverence? What decisions would you no longer delay? What words would you speak with courage? What habits would you stop feeding with excuses? The Stoic doesn't obsess over death. They use its certainty to magnify the value of each breath. Living with this awareness brings pain sometimes, a quiet ache in the chest. That ache is not weakness, it's clarity. It means you're awake. Don't cry over that pain, but do feel it fully, and then live stronger because of it, because you can. Chapter 2. Pain is the price of clarity. Life will bruise you. It will test you in ways that feel unfair. But unfairness was never a promise denied. It was never part of the contract. The Stoics never said life would be easy. They only said you could become stronger. Seneca once wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." That statement might offend someone who is truly hurting, but pause and examine it. When something painful happens, there is the pain itself, and then there is the story you tell yourself about it, the narrative, the projection, the spiral. Pain may be sharp, but it is often brief. Suffering, however, is a storm we sustain by our own thoughts. This is not a dismissal of your pain. It is an invitation to step into it differently, not to escape it, but to extract meaning from it. Every heartbreak, every rejection, every failure has something to teach, but you can only learn if you stop running from the lesson. Most people flee. Stoics stay. They examine, they question, they endure. Pain is not just inevitable, it is valuable. It is not just something to endure, it is something to study. Clarity is expensive. It doesn't arrive wrapped in comfort. It arrives through difficulty, through the furnace of trial, through the disorientation of discomfort. You do not become strong by being pampered or praised. You become strong by standing in the storm and refusing to bow. You become strong by bleeding and rising again and again, with more wisdom than before. Most people run from pain. They numb it, distract themselves, deny it. But the Stoic turns toward it with open eyes, not to wallow, but to learn. Because pain always carries a lesson, and only those who face it can receive the gift hidden inside the suffering. The lesson may not be obvious, it may take time, but it is always there. Imagine a life without pain. It might sound appealing at first, but look closer. Without pain, you would never develop patience. You would never know the deep grit of endurance. You would never uncover hidden strength forged in adversity. You would never know what courage actually feels like, because courage only exists when fear is present. You would never value peace if you never experienced inner chaos. You would never understand gratitude without having tasted emptiness. Growth demands pain. Meaning demands discomfort. And character is born where comfort ends. The Stoics didn't seek a painless life. They trained for a powerful one. They didn't crave comfort. They cultivated readiness. They walked toward challenge on purpose, because they knew that's where clarity lives. They knew that the best parts of themselves would be revealed in the struggle, not in the safety. So when the hard times come, and they always do, don't ask, "Why me?" That question leads nowhere. Instead ask, "What is this moment trying to teach me? What is this pain shaping in me that comfort never could?" That doesn't make the pain vanish, but it gives it shape. It gives it a path. It gives you somewhere to walk, even when your legs are shaking. And when pain has a path, it doesn't just scar you. It becomes a sculptor. It shapes you into something wiser, stronger, and more grounded. It doesn't just leave a wound. It leaves a lesson etched deep into your being. It gives you depth that comfort could never grant you. It chisels your convictions. It strengthens your patience. It teaches you how to carry on when the world gives you every reason to stop. This is what the Stoics understood. They didn't worship suffering, but they didn't waste it either. They knew that suffering without reflection is just agony, but suffering with awareness is transformation. They knew pain is the sharpest teacher of all, and if you face it with courage, not once, but over and over again, it becomes the very thing that refines your soul. It makes you clear. It makes you capable. It makes you resilient in ways no theory ever could. Because the deepest truths are never learned in ease. They are earned in the fire. Chapter 3. Control is a sacred line. There is one line in life that defines your peace. It is the line between what is within your control and what is not. Cross that line, and you will drown in things that were never yours to carry. Stay on your side, and you will begin to taste freedom. The Stoics were obsessive about this distinction, not because it was easy to follow, but because everything depended on it. It wasn't just philosophy to them, it was survival, sanity, strength. Epictetus returned to this principle like a compass. You do not control the weather. You do not control the moods or decisions of others. You do not control the outcome of events, even with perfect effort. But you control your mind. You control your judgments. You control your response. That is the line, and you must protect it like a fortress, because once you cross it, you give your peace away to forces that were never yours to command. Most people spend their lives beyond that line. They live mentally in other people's heads, trying to be liked, trying to be understood, trying to be approved of. They argue with what has already happened. They fantasize about what they can't control. And all the while their energy drains, their spirit weakens. This is the tragedy of modern life. Not that we suffer, but that we do it unnecessarily. We suffer by choice when we ignore the boundary between what we can and cannot influence. The Stoic does not live that way. They come back again and again to what is theirs, their thoughts, their actions, their principles, their decisions, nothing more, and that is enough. There is a rare kind of strength in letting go, not in defeat, but in clarity. Letting go of what was never yours to hold isn't weakness, it's liberation. You show up, you give your best, you do what integrity demands, and then you release. You do not cling to outcomes. You do not beg the world to bend. You stand and you trust. This isn't detachment out of indifference. It is detachment out of power. Power over yourself. Maturity that knows what to pour effort into and what to leave untouched. Ask yourself, when the anxiety rises, what part of this belongs to me? What can I actually move, shift, or influence? Not in theory, but in concrete, tangible action. And then, move only that. Take focused action, however small, in the direction that reflects your values. Everything else, the parts that lie outside your grasp, the thoughts in someone else's mind, the shape of the future, release them. Not because you are cold, not because you are indifferent, but because you have learned to be precise with your strength. Because you have understood that spending your energy on what you cannot shape is like pouring water into a broken vessel. You will come to find, over time and with practice, that peace has very little to do with how well life cooperates with your preferences. It has everything to do with how well you command your inner world, your effort, your integrity, your clarity, your ability to stay grounded in a storm, not because the storm is over, but because you know which part of the sky is yours to fly in. This is what the Stoic knows, that serenity is not gifted by calm conditions. It is earned by disciplined perception. This practice, this art of staying within your sphere, takes daily vigilance. The world is clever. It will bait you constantly, pulling your attention across that sacred line. It will lure you into caring about gossip, getting tangled in imagined futures, stressing over outcomes you couldn't control even if you tried with all your might. And when that happens, when your energy starts leaking into territory that does not belong to you, stop, come back, recenter. The line of control is not just a helpful idea, it is a foundational practice, a compass, a lifeline. It is not just a mental trick to avoid stress, it is a battle-tested philosophy, a shield that keeps you intact in the face of chaos. It is not cold, it is clarity. It is not detachment from life, it is commitment to the only part of life you are truly responsible for, your inner conduct. So when life shakes you, when emotions rise like tides and uncertainty clouds the road ahead like fog, return to that line. Ground yourself in what is yours. Ask again, with complete honesty, what part of this belongs to me? What part of this situation is mine to carry, mine to influence, mine to transform? What can I act on with courage, clarity, and care? And just as importantly, what must I release, not as surrender, but as a conscious refusal to be bound by illusions of control? Letting go doesn't mean giving up. It means recognizing your limits and honoring them. Guard that line like a sacred boundary. Revisit it in your morning routine, your evening reflection, your moment of tension. Build your habits on that line so your discipline has roots. Speak from that line so your words carry depth. Decide from that line so your life reflects consistency. Live from it, not once, but again and again, in every choice, in every challenge, in every shift of your day. Because on that side of the line, you are not merely more peaceful, you are powerful in a way that doesn't require display. You become the one others turn to in chaos, not because you control more things or more people, but because you control the only thing that truly matters in the Stoic framework: yourself, your thoughts, your actions, your energy. That is the calm at the center of the storm. Chapter 4. Emotion is the horse, not the rider. Your emotions are powerful. They are meant to be. But they are not your master. They are your signal. They are your fuel. They are the horse, not the rider. And you must learn to ride. The Stoics were not emotionless. That's a myth. They felt deeply. They just refused to be ruled. Marcus Aurelius wrote about his frustration, his sorrow, his fears. But he wrote to clarify, not to wallow, to examine, not to justify. Emotion is energy. It is movement within you. It stirs, it swells, it tries to pull you toward action. When anger rises, it is telling you that something feels violated, your values, your space, your boundaries. But it is not handing you a license to explode or lash out. It's a flare, not a command. When fear appears, it is your nervous system signaling potential danger, uncertainty, risk. But it is not an order to retreat. It is a request for attention, for caution, not a verdict of doom. The Stoic doesn't obey these emotional signals blindly. They pause, they listen, they assess. Then they choose their action deliberately, not from reflex, but from reason. Emotions are messengers, not masters. They were never meant to control you. They were meant to inform you. Do not silence them. Silence makes them louder in disguise. Instead, educate them. Train them like wild horses, not by breaking them, but by building trust, by teaching them how to move with you rather than against you. Emotions, when directed by principle, become fuel for virtue. When you bring them under discipline, they become powerful allies. Anger becomes justice when tempered by wisdom. Fear becomes discernment when guided by courage. Sadness becomes compassion when shaped by purpose. But that shift only happens when you are in the lead, when you, not the emotion, hold the reins. The undisciplined person reacts. They are a leaf in the wind, blown in every direction the storm of emotion dictates. They do not act, they are acted upon. Their mood is not theirs to govern. It is owned by circumstances, by insults, by fear, by praise, by the noise of the world. The Stoic, on the other hand, responds. They do not deny the wind exists. They simply refuse to be ruled by it. They plant their feet. They recognize the emotion rising and create space before it becomes movement. And that gap between reaction and response, small as it may seem, is everything. It is the birthplace of virtue, the seat of self-command, the line between chaos and clarity. One chooses impulsive relief, the other chooses lasting peace. One tries to quiet emotion by obeying it, the other masters emotion by understanding it. Reaction is raw, explosive, unchecked. Response is considered, intentional, anchored. It doesn't ignore the emotion, it leads it. It asks, what is wise? What is just? What is worthy of me? Response is not weakness, it is the strength of self-direction in real time. This discipline, the mastery of emotional energy, is not gained overnight. It is a long practice of falling down and getting back up. You will say things you shouldn't. You will feel hijacked by anger, or crippled by fear, or overwhelmed by sadness. But that does not make you a failure. That makes you human. The failure is not in the emotion. The failure is in refusing to reflect. Every misstep is data. Every slip is a lesson. Failure in this path is just feedback. If you're willing to look at it honestly, it becomes fuel. Each time you choose a pause instead of a reaction, you're building something. Each time you observe instead of explode, breathe instead of blame, return to your principles instead of feeding your pride, you grow stronger. Not in a flashy way, not in a visible way, but in a quiet, steady, unshakable way. You're not crushing the emotion, you're shaping it. You're turning raw energy into something useful. You're becoming the rider of the horse, not the one dragged behind it. Keep training. This is not about perfection, it is about progress. Not about suppression, it is about transformation. And every day you choose response over reaction, you carve a new pattern in your soul. One that leads not to regret, but to clarity. One that leads not to collapse, but to composure. You become someone that people rely on, not because you don't feel, but because you've learned what to do when the feeling arrives. You become the rider. The storm still comes. The fear still appears. The anger still visits. But you are no longer owned by them. You no longer act on their impulse. You observe them rise like waves, and you surf them instead of sinking beneath. You meet them not with panic, but with presence. You move with them not in chaos, but with conscious command. You lead them toward action shaped by your values, not reaction driven by your wounds. That's what mastery looks like. Not the absence of emotion, but the artful direction of it. This doesn't make you cold. It makes you clear. It doesn't make you passive. It makes you powerful. Because when others are thrown around by their moods, you stand rooted. When others are consumed by offense, you stay focused on purpose. When others react and regret, you respond and rise. The emotions don't go away. They just stop steering. You take the reins. You become the force that channels the storm into motion. And that, by every Stoic standard, is one of the highest forms of human power. The ability to rule yourself when everything else is out of control. The ability to act from principle in the middle of pressure. The ability to stay whole when the world tries to shatter you. That is what Stoicism aims to build in you. Not detachment from life, but dominion within it. Chapter 5. Strength in Silence. In a loud world, silence is a form of power, not silence as avoidance, silence as presence, silence as depth. The Stoic does not always speak. They listen, they observe, they understand the weight of words, so they use them with care. When you are constantly explaining, defending, and justifying, you are scattering your strength like water through a sieve. Each word spent trying to be understood by someone determined to misunderstand you is a withdrawal from your reserves. Each effort to convince, to clarify, to prove your worth to people who are not committed to truth is a silent drain on your inner power. The Stoic understands that true strength does not come from volume or visibility. It comes from alignment. It comes from composure. It does not need to be shouted. It is sensed. It is felt in your restraint. It is recognized in your calm demeanor when others are loud with insecurity. A strong person can walk away from a fight they could easily dominate because they are wise enough to know that not every battle is worth the cost. They don't see silence as surrender, they see it as strategy. They know that some battles, even when won, leave you with wounds that weren't necessary. They can endure being mocked, misread, underestimated, and not unravel. Why? Because their stability isn't hooked into how others see them. Their peace doesn't need permission from the crowd. It is self-earned and self-kept. They can hear lies whispered behind closed doors. They can feel the sting of betrayal or the burn of injustice and still choose not to retaliate. Why? Because they understand that character is not something to be debated in public. It is lived. It is proven in patience. It is held with quiet consistency. A strong person does not need to conquer every voice raised against them. What they need most is to guard their energy, their focus, their state of mind. They know the cost of peace, and they refuse to spend it on noise. Silence, to the Stoic, is not absence, it is access. It is the chamber where you reconnect with your highest self. It is the pause where the fog clears. It is where you hear the voice beneath the noise, the voice that speaks not in panic, but in principle. Silence is where you sort truth from ego, wisdom from impulse. It is the reset, the return, the ritual of the calm soul. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." That is not just a clever turn of phrase. It is an ethic, a posture, a code to live by. When someone wrongs you, your true victory isn't found in retaliation. It's found in living in such a way that their actions become irrelevant. It's in maintaining your peace when they tried to disturb it. It's in keeping your integrity untouched when they tried to provoke you to compromise it. You win by refusing to become them. You win by outgrowing the need to even respond. You win by being untouchable, not in body, but in spirit. When you elevate your conduct above the noise, you send a powerful message without saying a word. You show through silence that you are not theirs to provoke, not theirs to manipulate, not theirs to define. That is a form of rebellion far more powerful than revenge. It is quiet, it is sovereign, it is steady. And in that steadiness, there is strength. A strong soul chooses dignity over drama, purpose over petty victories, and truth over ego. You do not owe your clarity to every critic. You do not owe your fire to every flicker of insult. You do not owe your sanity to someone else's chaos. You do not owe a single drop of your peace to those who have not earned your presence. Preserve your calm not as a retreat, but as a bold declaration of self-mastery. Not as a denial of reality, but as discipline in the face of it. Because every time you refuse to bite the bait of drama, every time you walk away when the world expects you to react, every time you choose composure over competition, you build something unshakable within you. In today's world, noisy, fast, shallow, silence is rare, and what is rare is often mistaken for weakness. But in truth, silence is signal. A signal that you've done the inner work, that you've come to know what matters and what doesn't, that you don't chase approval because you've built a foundation no opinion can shake, that you don't explain yourself endlessly because you live in such a way that explanation becomes unnecessary. That silence disarms the manipulator because it gives them nothing to work with. No resistance, no friction, no energy to twist into something chaotic. It unravels the petty because it denies them the stage they crave. Without your reaction, their drama loses its audience. But it uplifts the silent observers, the ones watching closely, hoping someone will show them there is another way to live, a stronger way to be heard without shouting, a better way to carry strength without swinging it, a wiser way to assert power without ever needing to display it. Because silence is not the absence of a fight, it is the presence of mastery. It is not a void, it is a sanctuary. It is the conscious decision to preserve your energy, your time, your spirit for higher things. It is knowing that not every situation deserves your engagement. It is understanding that real power often moves quietly. And in that silence, you are not just protecting your peace, you are proclaiming it. You are letting the world know, without a single word, that you are anchored, that you do not move at the push of provocation, not with a voice raised, but with a head held high, not with defensive words, but with unshakable presence, with a walk that does not stagger under the weight of insult or misunderstanding, with a presence so centered it becomes a force field, impermeable to chaos. In that space, you don't just win. You rise, you elevate, you transcend the level of the attack and become something untouchable. You stop playing their game because you've already won a different one, the one inside. You step out of their arena and into your own. You become a quiet standard that others measure themselves against. And you leave behind something unforgettable, dignity that doesn't waver, discipline that doesn't falter, and the kind of quiet power that can't be imitated, bought, or broken, the kind that radiates not in noise, but in presence, not in domination, but in unwavering peace. Chapter 6. Discipline is love in action. The Stoics did not see discipline as punishment. They saw it as self-respect, as love made visible, love for your potential, love for your future self, love for the gift of life, honored through right action. Modern culture often glorifies indulgence. Treat yourself, they say, as if restraint is a prison. But the Stoic knows the truth. Indulgence unchecked becomes slavery. Discipline, on the other hand, is the path to freedom. The freedom to choose what is best over what is easy. The freedom to live by reason, not impulse. Seneca said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." That mastery begins in the small things, rising when the alarm goes off, speaking with patience when anger flares, saying no when desire demands yes. These moments form the armor of the soul. Discipline is not just about habits, it's about identity. Every single decision you make, every small sacrifice, every act of restraint is a vote cast for the kind of person you are choosing to become. You are not just brushing your teeth or making your bed or resisting temptation. You are shaping a soul. The Stoic does not wait to feel like doing the right thing. They don't rely on motivation because they understand how fleeting it is. They build structure instead. They create systems and rituals that support their values. They commit to a code they've thought through carefully. A code that reflects reason, not impulse. They live by principle, not by mood, because they know moods are weather, but principles are architecture. Discipline is the foundation beneath consistency. It is the unseen force behind every act of excellence. When life gets hard, and it always does, discipline becomes your anchor. When emotion clouds your clarity, when anxiety fogs your thinking, when temptation whispers that it's okay to quit, discipline speaks louder. It clears the path forward not by emotion, but by alignment. It reminds you what you're here for. It does not come naturally. It is not inherited. It is not luck. It is forged, hammered, tested, and refined through repetition. It is built when no one is watching. It is chosen over and over again until it no longer feels like effort. It feels like identity. So love yourself enough to build discipline, not to impress, not to dominate, but to protect what is sacred in you, to ensure that your time, your energy, your attention are invested in what truly matters, to make sure your life doesn't just drift with the current, but moves with direction, deliberate and dignified. Discipline is not about being rigid or controlling, it's about being awake to your choices. It is the art of self-respect in motion. It's how you develop a deep trust in yourself, knowing you can rely on your word, your effort, your consistency. It's how you become someone whose actions align with values, whose days align with purpose, and whose presence speaks without explanation. Be the kind of person you can admire in the mirror, not because you were flawless, but because you stood firm when it mattered most, because you held the line when your feelings begged you to fold, because you carried on with resolve when every excuse whispered that quitting would be easier, more comfortable, more immediately satisfying, because you followed through even when there was no spotlight, no recognition, no validation from the outside. even when the only witness to your discipline was your own conscience. Because you chose the road of integrity when the road of convenience tempted you with its ease. You did the work not for applause, but for alignment. You showed up when it was hard. You stood tall when it was lonely. You lived with intention when it would have been easier to surrender to distraction. You made yourself proud in the quiet, in the struggle, in the discipline no one else could see but you. In that quiet strength lies a freedom that comfort can never give you. A freedom rooted in inner order, in knowing you are the kind of person who keeps their word. A freedom that no praise can build and no failure can break. A freedom that no circumstance can touch, because it was forged by commitment, day after day, choice after choice. That kind of freedom is not inherited from others. It is not given by life. It is not granted by fate. It is built. It is built in silence, in repetition, in effort. It is built in the discipline to rise when it's easier to sleep in, to hold your tongue when it's easier to lash out, to move forward when it's easier to stall. That freedom, earned in solitude, honored in daily choice, protected by principle, is the highest form of love you can ever show yourself. It is the deep knowing that you are living as the person you were meant to become. Not perfectly, but persistently. Not loudly, but truly. It is the quiet triumph of self-respect over self-indulgence. And it is yours to earn, one decision at a time. Chapter 7. People will hurt you. Don't let them change you. People will disappoint you. They will lie. They will betray. They will act from their own wounds and try to cut you in the process. This is not bitterness. This is reality. The Stoics never denied the cruelty of the world. They simply refused to let it corrupt their character. You will be tempted to harden, to close your heart, to become what hurt you. But that is the final victory of the wound, when it turns you into something you are not. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, to do harm is to harm yourself. If you respond to injustice with injustice, you have already lost. If you answer hate with hate, you have become its carrier. The Stoic remains anchored in virtue regardless of the behavior around them, not out of naivety, but out of conviction. This does not mean you tolerate abuse. Stoicism is not passivity. It is not about turning the other cheek indefinitely while your soul is crushed. It means you recognize the line between endurance and self-destruction. It means you protect your soul as fiercely as you protect your body, maybe more so. Because while bruises heal, corruption of the soul lingers, and nothing poisons the soul faster than giving in to revenge, than allowing bitterness to take root, than feeding the fires of resentment that burn you more than anyone else. When someone wounds you, remember this: their actions are their own. Their ignorance, their cruelty, their betrayal, those belong to them, not you. They carry the burden of their choices. They are the authors of their own character. But your response? That's yours. And that is where your power lies. It is not in controlling how others behave, but in mastering how you respond. The moment you take ownership of your reaction, even in the face of injustice, you reclaim control over your life. You stop giving your peace away to those who haven't earned your attention. Hold the line. Stay in your center. Don't let their weakness pull you out of your strength. Keep your integrity, not for their redemption, but for your preservation. Let the fire of pain refine you into something stronger, wiser, more grounded, not reduce you to ashes or reactive impulses. Walk away when needed. That too is strength, not the kind measured in confrontation, but the kind that comes from clarity. Walk away not in silence that screams surrender, but in silence that radiates sovereignty. It is a quiet statement that says, I choose peace over pettiness. I choose clarity over chaos. I choose myself. Draw boundaries, not from bitterness, but from a deep and informed understanding of what protects your well-being. Not everyone deserves access to you. Not everyone is entitled to your time, your explanation, your forgiveness in person. Forgiveness does not require re-entry. Healing does not require re-engagement. You can release the burden, learn the lesson, and move forward without carrying their energy any further. But never, never let their poison live in your spirit. Don't let their damage become your disposition. Do not allow their darkness to stain your light, your joy, your values. Rise higher, not to assert dominance, not to feed ego, not to prove a point, but to honor who you truly are. Rise because it is your nature, because it is your calling, because you will not let someone else's shadows dim your brilliance. Rise not in pride, but in peace. Not to win in their game, but to walk away from it entirely. Because when you preserve who you are in the face of who they are, when you remain anchored in virtue despite their chaos, you win the most important battle of all, the one for your soul. That is the Stoic victory. Quiet, uncelebrated by the world, but unmistakable in its power. Chapter 8. Happiness is not the goal, it's a byproduct. We live in a world obsessed with happiness. It's marketed, it's measured, it's chased. But the Stoics saw this pursuit as hollow, not because they disapproved of happiness, but because they knew it could never be pursued directly. Happiness is not a goal, it is a result, a natural consequence of living well, of living in alignment with reason, virtue, and truth. Epictetus said, "Happiness and freedom begin with a clear understanding of one principle. Some things are within our control and some things are not." When you chase pleasure, you become its servant. You lose yourself in the pursuit of fleeting highs, of moments that satisfy but never sustain. The more you grasp for it, the more it eludes you. When you seek approval, you hand over your peace like a coin at a market stall, traded for the unstable currency of other people's opinions. And when you attach happiness to specific outcomes, you place your emotional stability in things you cannot control. You are tossed by every wave, every change, every disappointment. This is not living, it is reacting. The Stoic, however, roots their joy in something far deeper: character, not circumstances, not applause, not temporary highs. Character, because character endures when conditions fail. And through that character flows a deeper, steadier joy, one that cannot be taken away by loss or delay or the failure of plans. Happiness, real happiness, arrives quietly. It does not crash in with fireworks. It doesn't need fanfare. It shows up like sunrise, gentle, steady, inevitable. It comes when your actions align with your values, when your outer life begins to match your inner truth, when you stop arguing with reality and start working with it, when you no longer need every detail to go your way, but instead meet the day with presence and readiness. When you choose the hard road, not because it's hard, but because it is right. And in that choice, you discover meaning. You discover strength. This kind of happiness isn't loud. It won't go viral. It won't always feel like bliss. But it is rich. It is warm. It is a steady undercurrent, not a crashing wave. A calm confidence that lives beneath the noise. A quiet contentment that survives the ups and downs. It doesn't scream for attention. It simply holds its ground. And it grows slowly, like roots, fed by discipline, nourished by gratitude, strengthened by perspective. If you want to be happy, stop chasing the feeling. Stop waiting for everything to be perfect. Stop asking, "Am I happy?" and ask instead, "Am I living wisely? Am I acting with courage? Am I showing up with justice? Am I honest with myself and others?" That is the true measure. That is the path. And the feeling you seek, the contentment, the peace, the joy, it will not lead. It will follow. Because happiness, to the Stoic, is not something you aim at. It is something that blossoms when you aim at virtue. Chapter 9. Time is not recyclable. The Stoics were obsessed with time, not because they feared death, but because they valued life. Seneca wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." Every day you spend distracted is a day you do not get back. Every minute lost to mindless scrolling, to mental spirals of worry, to dwelling on what should have been or fearing what might be, is a minute gone forever. Every hour spent in resentment, comparison, procrastination, lost. Not just past, but wasted. Time is not a commodity that can be stored for later use. It is your most precious resource. It cannot be renewed. It can only be honored, moment by moment, decision by decision. The Stoic does not wait for permission to begin. They do not wait until the conditions are perfect or until they feel fully ready. They act now. They speak now. They choose now, because they understand that delay is often a disguise for fear. Fear of failing, fear of discomfort, fear of change. But later is a trap. It's where potential goes to die. It is the graveyard of goals, the illusion that we can borrow time from a future we are not guaranteed. Examine your days with brutal honesty. Are you present in your own life? Or are you just surviving it? Are you living with intention or drifting on autopilot? Are you giving your attention to what truly matters, or are you simply staying busy to avoid what does? Productivity is not the same as purpose. Being active is not the same as being alive. Busyness is not a virtue if it keeps you from depth. The Stoic reflects daily, not occasionally, not once a year, but as a practice. They ask, did I live today? Did I move closer to the person I claim I want to become? Did I grow in character, in courage, in clarity? Did I speak with truth when it was hard to do so? Did I hold myself to a higher standard than the world requires? And if not, they don't spiral into guilt. They don't make excuses. They adjust, with resolve, with humility, with immediacy. Time is not just passing. It is being spent. Every second is a transaction. Every hour is an investment. The question is, what are you buying with your life? What are you exchanging your breath for? Spend it like it matters, because it does. Every breath is a gift, not a burden, not a given, a gift. Don't let yours be wasted on what does not move your soul, what does not build your character, what does not reflect who you were meant to be. The Stoics lived with this awareness constantly, not to be afraid, but to be awake. You must do the same, because time, once lost, never knocks twice. Live while it is still yours. Chapter 10. The Quiet Confidence of Living Well. There is a confidence that does not shout. It does not need applause. It is not dependent on recognition. It is the quiet confidence of a well-lived life. The Stoic doesn't seek to impress. They seek to align, to live in truth, to live by principle. This brings a kind of peace that can't be shaken by opinion or flattery. Confidence, in the Stoic sense, is not pride. It is not arrogance masquerading as strength. It is not the loud declaration of your worth. It is the quiet, steady certainty of character. It is knowing you have done the right thing, even when no one claps, no one notices, no one gives you credit. It is the calm assurance that your actions align with your values, and that alignment is enough. It is knowing you have shown up with courage, even when no one sees, and that your integrity does not need an audience to be valid. This kind of confidence is not given. It is built, brick by brick, through repeated action, through choosing what is right when it would be so much easier to compromise, through saying no when everyone else says yes, through choosing integrity over popularity, truth over comfort, justice over convenience. It is forged in silence, under pressure, in the moments when no one would blame you for taking the easier road, and yet you don't. It is built every time you tell the truth when lying would be easier, every time you show up when hiding would be safer. Every time you act with virtue, not because it's rewarded, but because it's who you are. You do not need to prove yourself when you are living by your principles. You stop needing to explain, defend, or perform. You let go of the exhausting desire to be understood by everyone because you finally understand yourself. You begin to realize that validation from others is fleeting, but inner alignment is enduring. Your life becomes the proof. The way you walk, speak, show up, it all carries the weight of authenticity. Your presence becomes the message, not because you're loud, but because you're clear. Not because you're imposing, but because you're real. You walk into rooms with a calm that is earned, not borrowed, not manufactured through image or bravado, but cultivated through effort and truth. People can feel it. They may not always be able to articulate it, but they sense it. Something in you is settled. Something in you is not searching for approval because you've already found conviction. You are not swayed by praise or shaken by criticism. Both become background noise compared to your own conscience. You don't chase approval. You live in such a way that your own approval is enough. You sleep well at night, not because everything is perfect, but because you showed up with integrity. And people notice. They feel your steadiness. They sense the weight of your words, not because you're trying to impress, but because you speak from a place of substance. They hear the quiet strength in your voice, not because it's loud, but because it's rooted. They trust your words, not because you're flawless, but because you are consistent, grounded, present, real. You don't pretend to be more than you are, and that very refusal to pretend makes you more than most who do. You are rare in your simplicity, uncommon in your clarity, and unforgettable in your calm. Aim for this kind of confidence, the kind that doesn't need applause to feel valuable, because its value is anchored in action, not affirmation. The kind that doesn't shift with trends or contort itself to fit public expectation. The kind that isn't shaken when people change their minds about you, because you didn't build your identity on their opinions in the first place. Not the kind that thrives on followers, likes, or approval metrics, but the kind that stands firm when the applause stops, when the room grows silent, and when no one is watching. The kind that doesn't fade in solitude. The kind that grows deeper there. Aim for the kind of confidence that holds you upright when the world around you tries to bend your values, when pressure tempts you to compromise, when fear tells you to conform. The kind that lets you speak softly yet be heard, because the weight of your words comes from the integrity of your life. You don't need to raise your voice when your character has already spoken. This kind of confidence cannot be faked, not through charm, not through aesthetics, not through curated appearances. It cannot be bought with cleverness, influence, or status. It cannot be borrowed from a mentor or copied from a book. It is not something you perform, it is something you become. It is not a costume you put on to look strong. It is a core you forge to be strong. It is the internal steel of a person who has chosen principle over popularity again and again, even when it hurt. Especially when it hurt. But it can be earned, quietly, deliberately, one principled choice at a time. One moment of clarity where you chose the honest path. One moment of courage where you acted despite fear. One act of integrity when no one would have known the difference. One conversation where you spoke the truth, even if it cost you comfort. One promise you kept, first to others and then to yourself. Over time, these small acts become something vast. They build something louder than any declaration: character. That character becomes your legacy, not your achievements, not your possessions, not your reputation alone, but your essence, what you stood for, how you carried yourself, how you made people feel, what you became, and what you refused to become. And that legacy becomes your quiet, unshakable power, a strength that doesn't scream, a presence that doesn't push, a life that doesn't need to explain itself. Because that kind of power, The power of a principled soul is not measured in what you say, but in what you live. It doesn't ask for attention. It commands respect through authenticity. It walks in truth and lets that truth speak for itself long after you've left the room.